It is just an honor and a pleasure to be here today, and what a fantastic conference. I don't know about you guys, but our team doesn't call this the Shackley Global Conference. We call it Adult Summer Camp. So, I wanted to first of all share something that really inspired me last night. Roger Barnett came up to us, and he had shared a story with me that his wife Sloan had said at one time a few years ago that she had watched our profile video that Shackley had done, and she had said that she wanted my life. And it was very surreal for me because what I'm going to share with you today is my story. And the things that I'm going to be sharing with you today are very personal things that I have kept very private almost my whole life. And they're moments of my life that, to be honest, I'm very ashamed of. And so because you're my Shackley family, I'm going to share with you my story. So this is my family. I have a beautiful family and a wonderful husband. And my oldest daughter, Alex, is here with my husband. And they are my life and they are my everything. And when people meet them, I often hear, "You are so blessed." I'll never deny that. But you see, my beginnings were not so blessed. This is the picture of my family. I was the second oldest of 5 children, and I grew up in Wisconsin, and that's me in the rainbow shirt. And what was interesting about my family is we were the poster board family for the Jerry Springer Show, or could have been. Kind of a unique situation. The reality was my mom was mentally ill my entire childhood, so I pretty much grew up without parents. And I can honestly say I don't have one loving memory of my mother ever in my childhood. So when people ask me to describe my mom, she had what we think was schizophrenia, and she was a very severe case of it, but never really got clinically diagnosed or helped. And so I'm going to describe to you what her worlds were like, because that's how we described it as a child. So world number 1 was my mom's outside appearance was that of a homeless person. She never bathed, she never took care of herself, and never wore deodorant. And she was very unhealthy. She was about 350 to 400 pounds. And this is a picture of the inside of the home I grew up in. My mom was also a horrible hoarder. So we had aisles of pathways to walk. And this picture really doesn't do it justice because most of those piles are about 12 to 15 feet high. And if you can imagine the critters that kind of came with it, this was my home. And in world number 2, in my mom's mind, she was rich. So at times that light would switch on, and she felt she was highly educated. She actually did have a teaching degree. And my mom was very entrepreneurial in her mind and wanted to travel the world. In world number 3, my mom was a con artist. My mom stole thousands of dollars from very good people, and she hung out with the wrong crowd. In world number 4, my mom was a prophet. That's what we called it. My mom was a religious fanatic. She could quote almost any passage in the Bible, and she knew how to manipulate it and twist it to her own personal gain. And in world number 5, we called this the hidden world. This was a world where I really never knew where I came from. I didn't know my aunts and uncles and my cousins. It was as if the 5 of us were on an island, and we really didn't know our life story, our past. And so often I get two questions asked to me. Well, how did you turn out the way you did, and where was your father? So Dad was kind of like Waldo. Where's Waldo? He didn't know how to deal with the craziness of my mom. You never knew what world she was in. And so he chose not to. And he lived in a different state and would come and visit us every so often, and it was probably better that way. And so how did I survive? And it was really quite simple. You see, I survived with 2 simple things. In all the craziness of my world, my mom did send us to Christian schools, and I learned one simple word, and it was called faith. And I hung on to that my whole life. And ironically enough, I had another thing that really inspired me. And I know it sounds crazy, but it's true. It's Little House on the Prairie. I watched watched it every single day of my life. I've read every book a million times. And you know why? Because it was based on a real story. And their life and their pioneership of Laura Ingalls was based on faith, too. And so when my world got so bad and so wrong, and I saw so many not so good things, I went into that world. And I was Laura Ingalls, and Charles and Caroline were my parents. And so years later, I found some pictures from my childhood, and as you can see, I looked like Laura Ingalls. I wore my hair in braids, and I cared for my younger 3 siblings because Mom just wasn't able to. So I'm going to share with you just a couple of stories that impacted my life. And one of them is lemonade stands. We often were hungry, and we had to think of creative ways to raise money. And so little did I know I was an entrepreneur from the beginning. And so I loved this picture. I'm not in it, but I strategically and would market and network with my siblings and the neighborhood kids to profit as much money as we possibly could selling lemonade. And I took this picture and found it years later because that was the day that we made the most money selling lemonade. And we ate well that week. But there was something that happened to me in the 3rd grade, and it's lived with me my whole life, and it's not something I'm proud of. When I was in the 3rd grade, I really struggled with math, and I came home one day and I got a C on my report card, and my mom, you have to understand, my mom looked at her 5 children. We were a government transaction to her. We were a tax write-off. And so when she would look at us on paper, she would really have a hard time with that. And so she was embarrassed that I had a C. And so she went into that con artist world and kind of the education world, the rich world, and she lied and said she was tutoring children. And my mom got all the teacher manuals. And from 3rd through the 8th grade, my mom would make us cheat and write down all the answers on the paper. And so my learning stopped in 2nd grade. I have a 2nd grade education. I never learned simple multiplication and division facts, and it's not something I'm proud of. And by the time I got to high school, I knew it was wrong how I was living. I had seen so many things that just weren't right. And you have to understand, I knew Charles and Caroline Ingalls like no one else did, and I knew that life was out there. So an amazing thing happened. I got my license. And I had some really great friends that had junker cars. And so they were so gracious that they would let me borrow their cars for sometimes a couple days and sometimes a week, even 2 weeks, and I would live out of them. And an amazing thing happened during that time in my life. I would drive out into the country and I would find abandoned properties. I was fascinated with them because it was like the closest thing to pioneering in today's world. And I started dreaming, what if I could live in the country? What if I could find that little house in the prairie life? And another amazing thing happened while I started dreaming is I started to dream big. I wanted to travel. I knew in all the books I had read, my mom couldn't take reading away from me. And I read, and I wanted to travel the world. I wanted to reach summits. I wanted to do so much. I also turned 16, and I got my first real job. I was a waitress. And so I learned that if I worked hard, I got paid good. So I learned a couple valuable lessons. And then something amazing happened my junior year. I got my class schedule. And you have to understand, my first 2 years of high school, I actually missed more high school than I was in school. And I cheated enough just to pass by because I was so far behind. But my junior year, I had 2 classes on my schedule that weren't based on anything else: German class and speech class. And I knew that I had to change my life. And so I decided that for the first time since the 2nd grade, I wanted out. And I did not want to cheat. And for the first time, I got 2 A's all on my own. So I was on a mission to change my life. I decided that I was going to join the military. I wanted to become a helicopter pilot. I wanted to travel to places where no one else had been. And I started to date. I had my first boyfriend, and I was going to go places. And then McDonald's happened. McDonald's. I'll never forget the day that I sat on the bathroom floor of McDonald's for 2.5 hours. and crying like I've never sobbed before because I was holding a positive pregnancy stick at the age of 17. And it was a monumental moment for me. McDonald's represents my life's change because I don't eat there. I just want you all to know that I do not eat there. But it became a golden opportunity for me because I will be honest with you. I set up an appointment to abort my child. I was ashamed. I lived my whole life people knowing my family was weird and Jerry Springer-ish, and no one ever thought it would amount to anything. So I decided that I was going to hide and keep hiding, and I kept thinking about Laura Ingalls. And I knew I couldn't. I didn't believe in that, you see, and so I decided to do what was right. And I knew the odds were against me, and I had two choices. Choice number one was to become a teenage pregnant runaway, and choice number two was to leverage my age of being 17 and to be put in a foster home, and I chose a foster home. I am forever grateful for that, and I'm forever grateful for that family, and very much so, very much so. And as you can imagine, everyone told me, Sarah, just give that baby up for adoption. Just give her up. Because, honey, you have a lot of catching up to do. But you have to understand, all I ever wanted was family. And so I decided to do whatever it takes. And against all odds and against what everybody else told me not to do, I did. I kept that little girl. And I gave her a beautiful long name, Alexandria Elizabeth, because I wanted her to be proud of who she was. Very much so. So the next 6 months were really what I call the roller coaster of my life. I never slept. I worked any job I possibly could. And you see, I had 1 year left of high school. And during that time, the con artist side of my mom came out. When I was in the foster home, I was a minor. Don't ask me how, I can't even describe how, but my mom put my name on her bills. And when I turned 18, I was now getting sued by several businesses and establishments. And to top it off, she refused to pay the high school bill to the school that she had chosen to send me to. And because of that, I couldn't get my transcripts released, so I couldn't graduate. I remember hitting another all-time low in my life, and I remember thinking, Lord, are you punishing me for keeping this baby? Was I too selfish? So I prayed for a sign. I prayed and prayed, God, give me a sign that what I chose was the right path, and he always does. But he just answers our prayers in ways we don't expect. And I know I'm fast food here. I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry. But then there's Pizza Hut. There's Pizza Hut, and Pizza Hut's monumental to me. I do eat there sometimes because it is so special to me. Because you see, it was March 24th, 1993, that my life changed forever. Because that was the night I met Derek Hein. I waited on him. Yeah. And the next year of that life, my husband, boyfriend at the time, friend at the time, he became my best friend. And he was a poor college student, grew up in a great family, but he had little himself. And when he realized what had happened to me, he went into the savings, the only savings that he had, and he hired an attorney with me, and he cleared my name from all the lawsuits. And it didn't stop there. We pursued getting my diploma. I know I had cheated, but at least it was on paper. I had the grades, and I wanted a high school diploma. And so a year after I was supposed to graduate, I got a cap and gown waiting for me, and I graduated high school. And Derek was there. Derek was there. And then Derek said to me, Sarah, you gotta learn math. You need to know how to balance a checkbook. So I enrolled myself into a technical school, and I took a couple of really basic 101 math classes so I could try to catch back up, and I know how to balance a checkbook. So I knew when he was the one for me when I finally took him to go through my house, and I had him meet my mom. And we walked outside afterwards, and I asked him, what did you think? And he just nonchalantly said, that's not you. and I knew I had my Charles Ingalls. And so on my wedding day, I entered a whole new world. I know it's the 80s, 90s hair. It is what it is. Can't change it. But on my wedding day, most people have their parents walk them down the aisle, or they're waiting for them at the end of the aisle. We had security for my family, and my mom snuck through security, locked herself in the church balcony closet, and we had to call the police to come get her out. It is what it is. I've never ran down an aisle so fast in my life on my wedding day. I was entering a different world. I was done with that one. And it was on our honeymoon. I'm not going to tell you the details of our honeymoon, but I will tell you this, that we had this huge bucket list of things that we wanted to do. And it was on our honeymoon that this thing called Shackley kept popping up. Because you see, Derek had been raised on the products. And even though no one in his family did the opportunity, neither one of us had a college master's or degree. And I obviously didn't even really have a high school degree. And so we wanted to find something. And what was Shackley to me? Shackley was a company that was integrity. It was honest. It was truthful. Shackley to me was doing what's right. That comes first. Shackley to me was the most ginormous family a person could ask for, all of you. Yep. Shackley was also a company where they didn't care about my past. They didn't care about the education or the lack of education. To be honest, there's so much intelligence in this room. I'm in awe of all the professionalism that's here, and I'm in awe that I'm here too. And that's what I loved about Shackley's. I had the same opportunity as everyone did, and you do too. And so, thank you. So Shackley came into our life, and we added 2 more beautiful children. And I've raised my children the last 16 years at home. And they are my legacy, and they are healthy, and they are happy, and I am so wanting to take care of myself that I never end up like my mother did. And Shackley also allowed us to pursue many other dreams. One of those properties that I would drive by was abandoned for 60 years. And Derek had the same dream as I did, and people thought we were crazy for purchasing this, and this is what the barn looked like, and this was actually cleaned up. But you see, Derek has incredible vision, and this is what Derek turned it into. I told you he's my Charles Ingalls. And what's really fun is he even put a screen inside it, and we host some pretty fun Shackley meetings in there, along with some barn dances. And I've raised my children little house in the prairie. My kids live a simple life. They raise animals, they ride horses, we butcher chickens. And I don't live like everybody else. I live like the Hines want to live. Shackley's allowed us to travel. I am checking off lots of places on that bucket list, and I take my kids with me because I want them to have experiences that I read about as a child, and they're having those experiences. We have climbed over 5 summits, and I love this picture because my youngest was 5 at the time. And the 5 of us, when one goes, we all go. I love our Shackley car. Remember the day we got our Shackley car? We got a Kia Optima, fully loaded. I remember thinking, this car I could live out of. 2 moonroofs. And what was really amazing is my husband. We wanted something fun but family, so we call it the Fast and the Furious gone family style. So we love our Shackley car. This last year, my son was in 3rd grade, and he brought home his report card. And he had a C on math. I found the best tutor I could possibly find, Mrs. Cordy. Yeah, and she's tutoring him, and she's tutoring me too. And he is going to be great at math. So, to give you a crossroads in my life, a few years ago, I got the call of my life that I knew was coming and waiting for. I hadn't seen my mom in 16 years, and she was now dying. She had a terminal brain tumor, and she had pushed everyone out of her life, and somehow had chosen her doctors to call me to take care of her, and I had a choice now to make. Do I deny the woman that did such horrible things to me my whole life, or do I help her? And of course, in the words of my husband, he said, "Sarah, you always do what's right." And so thanks to Shackley, I took 20 days off of my business and I cared for my mother. And I personally witnessed a miracle. When they removed her tumor, she had brain damage. And miraculously, everything, all her worlds were wiped away, and she was that of a 4-year-old child. And so I checked off 2 more things off my bucket list. I can never say I don't have one good memory of my mother. Because you see, I had one morning where I got to go and buy her all clean clothes, new clothes, and I dressed my mother. And what was amazing is the only thing she remembered was the name of her 5 children and the 10 grandchildren she had never met. And so my children met my mother for the first time. And the next day, my mom slipped into a coma, and I'm forever grateful for that. And when we planned my mom's funeral, it was, what do you put on the tombstone? And the 5 of us had reconnected, my siblings, and we all chose unanimously to remember her the last days of her life. And so her tombstone reads, "In loving memory," and the 5 of our names. Because you see, that's all she really remembered in the end. And so what I learned from my mother's death is this: we have to learn in life to be better and not bitter. My mom taught me to let go and have complete forgiveness. I bet if we went around in this auditorium, there are such stories from people's lives that you want to, they're way worse than what I had, and you want change. Let it go. Face your fear and let it go, and amazing things will happen. So in closing, I'd like to thank so many people. And the first person I'd like to thank is the Barnett family. And Sloan Barnett, what you said to me, or it's Roger, you have no idea how that impacted my life. And the reality is the Barnett family changed everything for every single one of us in this room. Didn't they? They were game changers. God bless you, the Barnett family. And they've become my Shackley family, and I love the picture of little old me with Roger Barnett trying to get into my picture. I love it. And then look at Crazy Rich Higby. That was in the Bahamas dancing. Biggest water drinking, crazy group of dancing people I've ever met. To my upline, they were my college education, as well as so many of these great leaders in this room. Gary and Faye Burke and Jonette and Mike Coogan taught me how to lead by being the example. Thank you. This is my lemonade stand now. This is my team. And I am going to strategically help them and market Shackley like none other so that I can help them reach every dream on their bucket list. And I love our team. They are wonderful. And to Laura Ingalls, who inspired me my whole life and has inspired me enough that someday I will write my life story with a lot of help of spell check. But I'm going to write my life story. And to my family, Derek, I'm taking you to Kenya. And to my daughter Alex and my daughter Whitney and my son Gavin, you are worth every moment. God bless you all. Thank you so much.